Good morning, everybody, in hell yeah, Prince George world, and this is a hello from Jabba, our PacMan frog. So I am back here at the exploration place, and we are live with Sabrina, our head keeper.
Hey guys!
Awesome. So what can you tell us about Jabba, Sabrina?
There's lots to tell you guys about Jabba. So these guys, they're called PacMan frogs, but they're also known as a horned frog. Some subspecies have a little flap of skin that sticks up off their eyeballs. That's where the horned frog name comes from. And the PacMan name obviously comes from their body type. So they're basically like a giant mouth and stomach with tiny little legs, and all of their other features are definitely much smaller than their mouth is. Their mouth is the majority of what they are. So we're gonna feed him. Hopefully he'll want to eat this pinky rat that we've got here, and you guys can see that mouth in action because it's pretty impressive.
Wait a minute, pinky rat? I thought frogs and toads all ate insects.
Yeah, so in the wild these guys do sometimes eat insects, and he does too. We feed him roaches and things like that, super worms occasionally. But they can also eat pinkies as a treat. You wouldn't want to give them that as a constant sort of food source, but in the wild they are super opportunistic, so they will eat any small animal that comes across their way, whether it be an insect or arachnid, spiders, bugs, things like that. They'll also eat small rodents, lizards, other snakes, things like that, and even other frogs. So they're definitely one of those animals that's not super picky about what they're going to eat. Actually, that's probably another reason why they call him a PacMan frog. Not only does he look like PacMan, but he also kind of acts like PacMan, going around and just eating whatever is in his path.
That's crazy. I didn't know that they could eat things like that.
Yeah, you actually really have to watch these guys because they will eat almost anything, whether it be your fingers by accident, which would not be good. They do have some pretty gnarly teeth in there. So his top teeth actually are backwards facing and are meant to pull prey in, which can sometimes be hazardous for them because they're not able to spit out a prey item. So if they eat something that is not a prey item, say a leaf or a stick or something nearby by accident, that can get stuck in their mouth and they can choke on it. But also, if your finger was to get stuck in their mouth, it is very difficult to get it freed. So they're definitely an animal that you want to be careful around in that regard.
I do remember one of our staff getting bitten a long time ago.
Yeah. Actually, I heard a story about that as well. I think he was trying to dig him out because what these guys will do, they're actually an ambush predator. So in the wild, as you can see, he's kind of burying himself in the dirt now. I didn't give him a huge layer of substrate because I didn't want him to be fully buried because we wouldn't be able to see him. But in his enclosure, we do give him a deep amount of substrate so that he can fully bury himself, and just his eyes will be sticking out. So sometimes he buries himself so far that you can't even tell where he is at all. I'm assuming the staff member that got bit was probably looking for him and was just digging around in the dirt with their hand rather than I use like a rubber spatula or something like that so that I don't poke him, but I'm not going to get my finger bit. You definitely have to be careful with that, though.
Interesting. So he's got sharp teeth like a snake, or...
Yeah, he does. He's got very big teeth for a frog. Most frogs do have teeth of some kind, but his are much larger than most species.
Oh, interesting. Cool. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, and because they're an ambush predator, these guys are very... they're very stationary. They don't really go around too much. They basically stay in one place. And hiding in the dirt is what allows them to be able to camouflage so that prey will come to them. They don't have to go out and look for it. So rather than hunting for food, they just sit and wait for food. Really interesting thing about them is, like we were talking yesterday about how some animals go into brumation. For example, the garter snakes, they would go into sort of a hibernative state. These guys do the reverse. So in the summertime, these guys will go into a state of dormancy where they hide underground, and they'll actually develop like a super thick layer of outer skin, which allows them to retain moisture so that they don't dry up and die, basically. And they live for the rainy season. So as you'll see, we've got his dirt here is super damp. He likes that. They can go for long periods with high temperatures and dryness, but again, that's a survival stage that they go into during the very dry summer months. So in captivity, we try to keep them comfortable in sort of like very moist substrate because that is what they would have during their best, most productive seasons in the wild.
Interesting.
Let's see if he wants to eat some food for us. Would you like to eat for us, Jabba? So these guys are native to South America. You can find them in Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, places like that. And most of the time, they're just hiding underground. Being an ambush predator definitely gives them the advantage that they don't have to use a lot of energy output to be able to eat. They just wait for something to come along, and when they see something that they would like to eat, then they just pop right out of the dirt. Oh, there we go,
Well,
and grab it with that
there he
super
is.
sticky tongue.
That didn't take long.
Yeah, and their tongues are extremely sticky. Like, he's very strong. If I was to pull that up, you know, he would probably lift right out of the dirt with his tongue stuck to it.
Really?
He once misstruck a pinky in his enclosure when I was feeding him. He was close to the glass, and he popped out. His tongue stuck to the glass rather than the food, and he actually had to put his front legs on the glass and force himself off. It was like a suction cup stuck to the glass. He couldn't pull his face away from it.
Really?
So,
What makes their tongue so sticky?
they have a membrane on the end of their tongue, so it's not like Karma where she has the chameleons. They have like a suction cup on the end of their tongue, so it's the shape and the muscles in the tongue that grab onto the food. These guys have a super sticky membrane on their tongue, so it's just like a thick, goopy layer of almost like mouth glue. And that's what allows him to grab his prey. And then those backwards facing teeth would hold it in his mouth if it was something that was trying to escape. Obviously, in the wild, the things he eats are alive. We feed them frozen and thawed pinkies here. The bugs he eats are alive. I have seen him eat pretty large-sized cockroaches, and he takes them down no problem. And you'll see now he's closing his eyes. Frogs and toads do not swallow the way that we do, so when we swallow, we use the muscles in our throat and our esophagus to push the food down to our stomach. He doesn't have the same body structure. He actually uses the muscles behind the backs of his eyes to push the food down into
That's
his
why he
esophagus.
closed his eyes.
Yeah, so when you watch frogs and toads eat, they'll often not only close their eyes, but they'll push them right into their skull.
Natalie's watching, and she just asked, what did he just eat?
So that was actually a baby rat. It was a pinky rat. It was frozen and thawed. When rats are born, they're basically little pink blobs. Rats and mice are very underdeveloped when they are first born, and then within the first couple of days, their ears kind of pop out, their eyes open, and then they start to walk around and things like that. But when they're first born, they just look like these little pink blobs. So that's what he was eating.
Yeah, and he's done the eye closing thing again to help force it down, and
Yeah.
he keeps opening his mouth a little bit.
Yeah, he will, and part of that is that the food is still being like pushed backwards, so he'll use the muscles in the back of his tongue as well to push them down. Sometimes though, the food is still kind of stuck to his tongue, and he has to sort of peel it off to get it to go down.
Very strange. How often does he eat?
When they're really little, they need to eat every second or third day at the least. Some people feed them every day, and that's good. As they get older, they need to eat every few days, probably every 3 to 6 days on average. That was a pretty big meal for him, so I'll probably give him close to a week before I feed him again. Similar to the garter snakes.
Interesting. And does that vary according to the time of year? Because with us, I mean, he's not going into brumation or hibernation.
It definitely does. So because they don't actually go into like a cold hibernative state the way that, for example, the garter snakes do, or like bearded dragons and things like that will, he, in the summertime, if it was super, super hot, he would go into that reverse stage where he's basically dormant because of the heat and dryness, and he would get that thick layer of skin. During that time, he wouldn't eat, and then when he was actually coming out of that period, so when the rainy season starts to come back in the wild where they will start to surface as soon as they can, as soon as the humidity starts to rise and things like that. And they will pull that whole layer of skin off, and that's their first meal from when they come out of that stage. So they'll actually just like eat the entire outside of the skin, and that way they don't have to go looking or waiting for anything.
That's efficient, I suppose.
They are very efficient little guys.
Now, he looks super fat, but that's how he's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, they generally look like little blobs, which is part of the PacMan name. They're a very round anatomical shape for these guys. He's actually a fairly small PacMan frog. They can get much bigger than this. The males tend to stay much smaller than the females do. Females can reach up to 1 pound and can get about 5 inches across. Jabba is probably a medium-sized male, so he could be a little bit small on the smaller side. In compared to like an older male, but generally they reach their full size within the first 5 years, and they typically only live about 6 to 9 years. So
We've had him quite a while, so he must be getting up there.
yeah, actually Jabba is almost 10 now.
Wow. Why is it our animals tend to live so much longer than they would in the wild?
Because we love them so much. We just try to make sure that we meet their natural parameters really well. So things like their dietary needs, their environmental needs, we try to make sure that we put a good focus on these so that the animals will do well in captivity as well as they would in the wild, except with the added bonuses of captivity of being able to be protected from predators, as well as ensure that they have a proper diet all the time. So
I get the feeling he's done with my camera pointing
he
at him.
is.
He's
He's
just
show you
turned
his
right
butt.
around
If
on
he
me.
could, he would bury himself too. And they will pee. If that's their number one defense mechanism. They will pee a lot, like a water balloon exploding, like way more than you would expect. And Jabba has shown me that before, so that's why I'm not gonna like pick him up and handle him. Obviously, too, he's got very sensitive skin, so I want to do minimal handling with him. Once in a while, I'll pick him up. If I do, I'm always super careful to approach him from the back and pick him up this way. And that's also why I would wear gloves when I was handling him. I would not pick him up with my bare hands, because touching amphibians, frogs, toads, newts, salamanders with your bare hands is generally not a good idea. Not only can you get germs from them, but the salts and the oils on your hands can be very uncomfortable for their skin, so we try not to do that.
It's one of the things you hear about when they talk about frogs and them being endangered is the environmental problems in their watersheds.
Yeah, exactly. They're very, reptiles and amphibians, or amphibians in general, are super sensitive, more so than a lot of other species, to environmental changes and to chemicals in their environment, or different sort of pathogens in their environment. It will definitely affect them more quickly than it will with a lot of other animals.
Hey, he hopped right out of
they
my
can actually
screen.
hop really far, and very quickly too. They're more agile than you would expect for their body shape with those tiny little legs.
Yeah, I gotta say, he doesn't really look like an athlete, but he's awfully cute.
Yeah, he's pretty great. Good job, Jabba.
Well, I didn't see Wyatt come on today, who always comes on our broadcast to ask where they're going to sleep. So I'm going to
Wyatt.
ask Wyatt's question for him.
Wyatt, so these guys are nocturnal, so they actually sleep during the day, and he'll be buried in the ground, sort of similar to when he's hunting. But you'll see his eyes sticking out of the ground, and he actually keeps them open while he is sleeping. So most of the time when you've seen Jabba in his enclosure, when you're here at the exploration place and you can just see his eyes sticking out of the ground, he's probably sleeping.
Isn't that funny?
They really don't do too much. I did try giving him a cave and a hide, and I put foliage in his enclosure in case he wants to hide under that, but he just hides in the dirt. That's his.
He does like to
That's
bury
his style,
himself.
for sure.
Well, thank you so much for sharing Jabba with us today.
Yeah, no problem.
And if anyone's got any other questions, how can they reach you?
You guys can go ahead and comment on the videos on Facebook, and even the old ones that we've already posted. If you have any questions that we didn't answer in the videos, I will go through and try and answer them. So feel free.
That's great. And we're back here tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, we definitely are. Tomorrow we are going to be showing off our vinegar and Miss Vicky, tell you a little bit about her. She's really cool, so.
Awesome. All right.
Buried himself again.
I guess Jabba wants to go back to his tank. So thanks everybody for tuning in and for staying put and staying healthy at home. We miss you here at the Exploration Place, but we're doing what we can to reconnect with all of you this way. So tune in at 10 o'clock Monday to Friday, and we will keep you posted on what's happening with us. Bye now.